Hello and welcome to the Make Ideas Reality podcast. I'm Justin White, aka the Garage Avenger. Stop listening to people. They are not helping you. Everybody's got something to say about what you do. People you know, people you love, people you hate, even people you've never met. They all want to tell you what to do and what to think, what's right and wrong, how to be better, live your life, or even further your career. But no one knows what's best for you because they're not you, and you should really stop listening to them. In this podcast, my guest, Mark Justin from Justin Wood, is going to discuss why life became amazing when he stopped listening to others. He talks about the impact others had on his decisions in school and as a young adult that led to a life of insufferable anxiety in a high-paid IT career. He then talks about how he dug himself out of that situation and took the steps towards working with something he truly loved, woodworking. If you've been given bad advice in the past or felt you've never had the support of friends or family, this episode I hope will give you an understanding where that bad advice or lack of support came from and how to analyze advice in the future to ensure you make the decisions that are right for you. Heaps to unpack in this episode, so let's get on with the show. Taking advice can be fraught with danger. You suddenly look in the mirror and see a stranger. What? That wasn't in life's brochure. That's where creativity became his cure. Welcome to the show, Mark Justin from Justin Wood.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Really excited.
Are you excited? It's good to hear.
Excited and nervous.
Nothing to be nervous about, Mark. Just a quick question, because your name is Mark Justin, which is two first names. Is that has that been a difficult thing in your life?
Yeah. It wasn't a problem until Justin Timberlake came along and made the name so popular, and then after that, it was a big problem. And then it's also a problem when you call your business Justin Wood, and everybody assumes that your first name's Justin and second name is Wood. So, but I'm well used to it, and I answer to it almost on a daily basis.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a little bit like what we talked about in the pre-podcast chat. Was like my twin brother Kieran. Right, every time someone said Kieran, I would turn around because everyone would I would sort of just relate to the name Kieran as well as Justin. So, there's not perhaps a lot of my listeners that know about you, so I thought I'd give you the chance to tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do and why you do it.
Yeah, well, I'm 38. I've got 3 kids and 1 wife, and I live here in Northern Ireland. I worked in IT for nearly 15 years. I had some good jobs. I got super stressed. I got mentally really unwell, started getting panic attacks. Um, I started like a woodworking hobby on the side. I pretended that it was a real job. I ran it really, as much as I could. I did craft fairs, shops, and Etsy and stuff. And then it was made redundant in IT. And then it forced me to go full time in custom furniture. And I haven't looked back since.
That's amazing. So today, now that we've heard a little bit about Mark's story, today we're going to be talking about why you should stop listening to people. And this includes your family, your friends, mentors, and unfortunately, most importantly, your mum and dad. And before I go any further, I want to say that this is not a witch hunt to blame anyone for bad advice. In fact, 99% of the advice given by friends and family is given with the best of intentions, but it's often tied to the way people see the world and may not quite be right for you. And Mark has had a bit of a roller coaster ride where he's, had to take some advice, and taking advice can be fraught with danger for many reasons. And they may not know you as well as they think they know you. They tell you what they want you to do. They tell you what they would do in your situation. They most probably don't have the experience to know what you should do either. And there is possibility that they don't want you to change because of selfish reasons. And the other crazy thing is they could be even jealous of you. So today we will hopefully touch on a couple of these points when talking to Mark about his journey from a high-paid, stressed, and anxious IT tech to a full-time, humble woodworker. Now, Mark, I wanted to see if we could start right at the beginning, and let's go back to when you were a young lad. What did you like doing when you were a young lad? What do you like spending your time doing?
Yeah, I was just one of those wee kids that was just out and about all the time, climbing trees, there was farms around where I was, and going there. Lots of time spent on my bike, making jumps and ramps, and building go-karts, making huts and dens, tree houses. Um, I love fixing stuff, so I fixed most of the neighborhood's bikes, and I was like obsessed with taking things apart and working out how how everything worked together. I also, my granddad had like back then it was the biggest, workshop ever, when you're a kid. And he was like an old school carpenter. So I spent a lot of time in there. And then if he was out and about doing jobs, I was always out, you know, on his tail watching everything and helping him as much as a kid. So that's pretty much sums up my youth.
So it sounds like you had quite like a hands-on sort of way of looking at the world. Uh, what? How did you end up in IT? If as a young lad you were always sort of out and about making skate ramps and in your granddad's workshop.
Yeah, it's a funny one. You ask yourself these questions, after 15 years of being in a job. But I really looking back now, this made me think so much about it, and I really genuinely believe like the whole school system is broken. I feel like the intelligence and academia, so like the teaching of people, is not required if you want to do anything creative or use your hands. I think unfortunately there's still a stigma that if you work with your hands, you don't need to use your head. And so I think that's the school system that we're looking into. And when we think about success, obviously it's completely subjective, but the average person or the average meaning of success to most people is money. And money means you have to get a good job, and a good job in quotes, of course. And certainly a good job is not going to be some sort of creative job. Um, you know, my parents were very academic and still are. Um, and I think when they look back at their life, they're probably thinking they've done really well for themselves. And if it worked for them kind of thing, then it's gonna, it'll work for me. And I think maybe they looked at me thinking this is the good path, this is the path to go. And they definitely were steering me towards the business studies choices, picks over art. And basically what happened was I get caught. We talked about a funnel in the pre-pod, like
Yeah.
almost this like school thing that kind of pushes you down one path. And like for me, it was this one subject of IT I was good at. And it was kind of like you just pushed you down that. And that's, it sounds ridiculous, but that's as simple as what it was. And just that one thing just pushed me right down that path.
Yeah, because it sounds like, both our parents and the school system sort of are in some ways outdated, right? They know what the world they grew up in, and, so they often push what they want you to do or what they would do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that sounds like most of the creative people I talk to is, they got kind of pushed down the rabbit hole, uh, just to follow the crowd, and then realize later, like, wait a second, what happened?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And was there like was there a specific moment where you remember your parents having sort of influence over, you know, your life or decisions you were making, or you let them make decisions for you?
Yeah, I think as a child, the irony is here, like I was such a punk rock kid, and that I was into the music and I was into everything like like that. And my mom always told me, don't be like everybody else. Don't be scared to be, different. And then obviously she went on to regret that greatly. But it was funny, you do look at your parents with they have experience. I think they are looking out for the best in you, but it's maybe through their eyes what they think's the best. It's not, and maybe they can only do that. But you know, talking about the moment realizing this, it was definitely when I hit like my rock bottom in IT. Those moments of just like you just look at your life and how did I get here? Um, I was thinking 35 years more of this. Like it just can't you just can't do it. And it is a symbol of at school you follow the thing you're good at, you go down that path, and ironically, like one thing that you're good at could lead to a lifelong career. And when I was doing IT, it was the next big thing. It was all this talk about all this money, and it is a big deal. But you know, there's just such an influence of this is it, this is it. If you get in now, you'll be, ahead of the game. And yeah, and it's funny because looking back, my mom's never done tell me stories now of like, oh, when you were young, you were taking this apart since you were three, or like breaking this or taking this apart and never putting anything back together again. And I look at it and think to myself, I was never made to sit in an office and not use my hands. Never, never, never. And, you know, something I worked out that, you know, you just can't let somebody else's happiness affect your happiness in the grand scheme of things, and it just, yeah, it really stuck out with me.
It's super interesting you talk about your mother sort of realizing like what you're good at. It's very clear to me that like she had, and probably your father had put their world view on a career in IT as like a very important thing over, for example, working with your hands, even though it was very clear from an early age you liked doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think maybe from their perspective, they they think it is a good career and there is money to be made, and it's it is successful and it can bring whatever you want to bring from it. So yeah, yeah, it's just a difficult one. It definitely is.
I think it's interesting that they don't know you as well as they think they know you. No matter how comfortable you are with someone, a person knows only just a small amount of really what goes through your own head, right? Because we don't share everything with others. If best case scenario, someone might sort of understand 80% of who
Mm.
you are, but it's never really 100% because they're not up in your brain listening to the thoughts that are actually going through your head.
Yeah, and I think the thing is they're never going to know your feelings of going down that path either. You
Mm.
know.
Did you feel pressured from like the school system as well, like as well as your parents to like follow that path, or
Yeah, I think.
society, or like friends, or other things going on?
Yeah, I think it's funny because at the end of the day, it was my fault. I never thought about it. It's hilarious. Like when I was in school, I was going to be a rock star. Like I didn't need a career because
Yeah.
that's what I was going to do. I was going to play in punk rock grunge bands and I was going to tour the world, and that was going to be great. So I was naive and young. I didn't know, but I still let I just followed the next thing, because this is what you do. That's what you have to do. You
Mm.
know, what other choice have you got to do that to do well in school, go to university, get a job? Like that's just what you do. And there's nobody ever out there telling you that, what, you have to be, well, you don't have to be, but it helps like to be intelligent and use your hands. Like it's not like one or the other. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Well,
Like,
in my opinion, those people that use their hands are one of the most intelligent people because they're often able to problem solve. Everyone just
Yeah.
thinks like a mechanic is just unbolting stuff. Not true at all. You know, I really struggle to understand sometimes people's perspective. But again, we're talking about people who grew up in a different, you know, environment, different time,
Yeah, that's
and
it.
where they believe that what their vision of the world is the most important and is the, for example, root of success. Like you going to school and doing an academic subject is the way that you make, a successful
Yeah.
life for yourself. In many people's eyes, it's the money, it's the car, the house, all that stuff that which we've talked about on previous episodes. It's a big issue for a lot of people to let go of that stuff and be able to like get on with their something they actually really want to do, and realize that the stuff doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all, and again, maybe you need to go through the life experiences you do. Like if I didn't get so miserable in IT and really have that kind of real pivotal moment of like, what am I doing? Can I do this for 35 years more? And I maybe would never find anything else either. If I wasn't that desperate, I wouldn't appreciate what I have now half as much.
Yeah, you
Uh,
mentioned you mentioned anxiety before, and like you in the pre-pod, you talked about panic attacks, and this subject's like a little bit taboo against men. I was just wondering if you might want to share a little bit about it because I think it's important to share because I think there's more of us suffering from this than we actually realize. Even people listening to this right now probably don't think they're suffering from anxiety until they hear someone that suffered from it and realize, oh shit, I'm in the same boat.
yeah.
Um, what was your journey like with? Do you want to give us a bit of an example of like sort of circumstances where you realized like, oh shit, I'm in trouble here?
hmm Well, my anxiety and panic attacks got so bad it was just completely crippling. I couldn't have a normal life. I couldn't at the really bad stages. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't get in the car. I couldn't go into public places, shopping center, any of that. And that whole thing lasted on and off for almost a decade, almost 10 years. And
That's a
I
crazy amount of time.
it is like I lost that. Oh, yeah. But I mean, I really did blame my career. The whole way through it, I thought to myself, this is stress. I'm a fixer. I need to fix things. And there's too many problems. I'm never fixing all the problems. I want to keep people happy. I want to do my best. And it's never good enough. And, I likened me, um, being in IT and my anxiety to an alcoholic working in a bar that, as long as they're there, like pulling the pints and being around all the alcohol and being in that environment, they're never going to get away from like that. Not that it was the root of the problem, but I almost felt like that caused the stress and caused the real despair of like, what am I doing? I'm not made to be doing this. I can't do 35 more years of this at all.
Oh yeah, I've had the same thoughts go through my head when I was working as a commission and service engineer, like in China. I was like, what are you doing here? Oh,
Yeah.
like this is not you. Like you should not be doing this. Um, and I wonder like that thought because I wanted to sort of hopefully expand on this a little bit because people, I think, um, don't realize how big an issue it is with most of us, especially men, because we are pretty notorious for not talking about shit and
Yeah.
and pushing things down. So, you know, was there a time where you like look back on it now and you're like, oh man, that was like the first signs that I, was gonna suffer from this
Yeah.
debilitating, you know, affliction of anxiety and panic attacks?
Yeah. For me, I didn't even know what it was. Like I just thought that I was getting so ill. And it was, I just started getting like, I just thought I was really ill, like physically ill. And I was physically ill, but, I didn't even realize that it was panic attacks. And I would just have to leave places. I would like almost be fainting, shaking, really uncontrollable, crazy thoughts. And I was so naive that I was going to the doctor going, right, I'm obviously dying. My heart's doing this crazy thing. It's doing, I'm going to faint. I'm shaking, pins and needles, all this. And, you genuinely think you're dying, and it sounds ridiculous, but at the time, nothing makes sense. There's no, logical, like thinking. There's no rational thoughts. It is like the worst case ever right now. And you can't, in that worst, but for me anyway, I couldn't get out of it in those moments, you know?
Yeah, I mean, how did you dig yourself out of that hole? You know,
Yeah. I mean, I need to be careful what I say because sometimes people come on and say these like I just said I did 10 years on and off. And like, does that mean it's done? Does that mean I beat it? Whatever. I don't know, but I do know that, like my wife was a major reason that I got through it. I mean, we had to learn this together and learn how to cope, how to like live for goodness sake, her new husband can't leave the house and nobody knows why, so, and my faith was good. And like I have a faith, and that was something to really help me through it. And then I think the most important thing about mental health is like I talk about like actively punching it in the face. And it's this idea of like aggressively fighting against it. And it's like in the midst of all these things, you just want to run. You want to be away from everybody, not doing anything. But it's like forcing yourself, and actively punching that in the face might be the smallest thing, like trying to leave the house, trying to go into the shopping center for a minute, trying to go into a queue, um, and really pushing yourself. And with that, and with exercise and breathing techniques and eating well and taking supplements, I reading all the books, it was just that real, um, I was going to do it. I had to do it because it isn't a life, to be that crippled with it. And, that's, that saying about creativity is therapy. It's just, that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because when you come out the other side of it, again, like I'm careful about what I say, I'm not just saying it's so easy to get over or whatever, but when you are in those situations and you come out, you look back at how bleak it was and how hopeless it was, and look at it's almost like a new life, if that doesn't sound ridiculous.
mm.
And you look at what you do, creating beautiful things, and you know that you're made to do this. This is what I was made for. And that comes with a sense of like achievement for every time you make something, and a real passion for your work and for life. And that's how I have coped.
I think it's really interesting that we're having this conversation today because, right now I can't see properly through my right eye because what I found out after a day of testing at the hospital is a stress-induced eye injury, which, I thought I had a handle on all the things that were going on in my life and that I was not stressed, but my body wanted to tell me otherwise. And I think it's really, I always see there's no, there's no like coincidence here. Like us talking about this right now has some
Yeah.
sort of meaning also for me as well. I realize that, I've got too much on my plate and I'm trying to do too much and something needs to give, and to be content and happy with the way I'm going still, but also being relaxed enough to not have it be stressful and, anxious over things that I can't control, right?
It's funny because your body, when I was first going through that, there's no one thing. There's no, oh, this happened and then that, and I need to fix things. I need to fix everything. And it's like, what can I fix this problem? And I didn't even know what the problem was, but your body has a funny way of like, of almost like displaying what's going on in your mind, like physically. It's crazy, you know?
You mentioned creativity is therapy. Let's talk about your woodworking and stuff. You so you had a bit of a journey to get there, but essentially you got retrenched from your IT career, which happened to be a godsend. And then you went headfirst into woodworking. Um, it was obviously therapeutic for you, but did you have the support from friends and family when you made that jump?
Yeah, my wife, before we got married, I made her promise that if I was a rock star, then we would just be able to tour around the world. So she would be ready at any time to jump ship, no matter what. So she has been great. I mean, without her, it wouldn't happen. And it's been so difficult, but she's been so supportive. And in the moments I'm not feeling great about the business, she's like pushing me on and vice versa. So we work really well as a team in that respect. I think she knows that I need this, and this is what I was made for, and that even my passion for making everybody else find their passion and wanting everybody to leave their jobs if they don't absolutely love it, even saying that makes her, even more supportive. But
Hmm.
no, I mean, my close family, like most of my family, were just like assumed that I was going to go back in IT, and it was a matter of when. And you know, I would get job papers left out for me with things circled, you know, and
Yeah.
I was said, like, oh, this is obviously a hobby, but you don't throw away what you've you know what you've built up, you've studied for, and it's hilarious. And I even had good friends, maybe a year or two in, saying because I think people know how hard I work, and the first couple of years of business when I was learning quite literally learning on the job, trying to run a business, trying to get money in, trying to price things, so much to it. And they probably knew that I was working way too hard, and they probably knew that I wasn't making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And, I had good friends sit down to me and say, like, Mark, is this worth it? When are you going to draw the line? And like, I was so hurt. I was like, what I was like before. You know what I'm like now. And it's like, how can this not like it's not worth it financially, no, at the minute. But that's not what we're aiming for. And look at my life now. So like they were like their fears and their oh I could never do this was like completely projected onto me, you know.
100%. Yep. That's a good point you bring up there. It's like their fears came into to play with your dreams. Like
They could
they
never leave a good job
yeah.
making good money to make potentially nothing,
Yeah.
just they just can't do it. So and again, they're as you've said before, like they're probably trying to look in your best interest, but yeah, you just it's just like and not all my friends are like that. I had really really supportive friends as well. That are reasons that you keep on going, but yeah, it shocks you how
I guess
people trying to be kind.
yeah, but I mean, I guess they don't some people don't want you to change at all because that impacts your relationship with them, right? So,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
example, you working so much all the time means you don't see them anymore. And they're like, hey, what's up? Like, we're not mates anymore. Like, what's going on? So that comes into play where they have an opinion that, the work is the problem. And so they try to help you in that respect because of the way they see it. And I mean, also, I think it's interesting because they say beware of the person who fears your evolution. So, people that often see someone, building on something, uh, have this fear sometimes of being left behind,
mm,
and that can also influence them to say things or have opinions on how you work, and that sort of thing. And I think you need to be very careful of, or at least conscious of those fears people have when they're talking to you about, for example, your dream job or the way you work or the way for example, even parent your kids, things like that. I think it's very important to think about.
yeah. It does make you appreciate the people who do support you, though. You know,
Yeah, 100%, mate. Like you've really got to make sure that you keep those people that support you around. I think that's who you want around, really, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Mm. Um, I wanted to sort of finish my questions mainly on a positive note. I want to talk about your woodworking business and some of your highlights in your career so far since changing from IT. What has been some of the biggest highlights for you um, in your woodworking new career?
yeah. I think that one of the biggest highlights, you know, in a work-life balance type way is like I feel like I just had a like almost like a new life, and I think this is like it's one of the I actually think this is what people hate the most, that I wake up happy to go to work and sad on a Friday if I'm not going to be in until Monday. People can't hack that there are people that exist that love that, and I can't do it enough. And I would just want to be doing it. I'll never learn enough. I'll never be good enough, and I'll just spend, that's what I want to be doing. But work wise, you know, I was really fortunate that at the start of the pandemic hit off, and one of my items on Etsy really kicked off, like a bottle opener. And, it's not something that I'm really proud of or it's really beautiful, but it really hit off, and it was selling lots, and it got us right through, and it was really nice to see that success finally pay off after, 3, 4 years. But one of the probably the biggest highlights is I got a phone call one time from like a PR guy from a whiskey company, Powers Whiskey, and they just wanted to work alongside me. They wanted to do like a film about my handcrafted, you know, like use of wood, and wanted to do projects with whiskey barrels. And I found myself in a place where I was welding up a big art display, like a big wall display with whiskey barrels, and hand cutting out all these letters. And I just thought, I had one of these light bulb moments of like watching Jimmy Dristy years back,
Hmm.
hand cutting these things, learning, watching him weld the frames, watching fix this to that, and set out letters. And I just came home and said to my wife, I was like, I was doing like what I used to watch, and like I wouldn't even dreamed of doing that work, for big companies, and they want to work with me, and I'm getting paid for this. It was such an amazing moment for me to have that. And so that's definitely one of the best things.
I think that like whenever you compare yourself to a Jimmy DiResta video, you kind of like
Not, no, here, hold on. I'm not comparing them. I'm just saying
no,
that,
no, but I mean you have to in some point in your career because it's a bit of a like I'm in the right direction, like
yeah,
that's
yeah, well, I
especially with
wouldn't even
someone
have
you look
dreamt of
up
it.
to, right?
Yeah. And I've got a bone to pick with him as well, because I keep on like messaging him, trying to show him a picture of the stuff that he did. And
Yeah.
he's never answered it. He hasn't seen it on Instagram. So I'll have to get that sorted one of these days.
Uh, Jimmy, I know you listen to this podcast. Sort it out, mate.
I'm just trying to be appreciative and say that. Thank you.
I'm so pumped for you. Like, I mean, I think just going to work and being happy, I think is the most important thing. But then when you have small successes, even something you don't think is like the best product you, for example, create, but it pays the bills and it moves the needle forward. And then to
Exactly.
have something like Power Whiskey to come and talk with you about doing a project together, I think you know you've got to see the signs that it's the right direction for you. Did you feel like you had those signs for the right direction when you were in your previous career?
It's a funny one. I work my ass off. I really do. Like, I'm a hard worker. I love fixing things. So I have a good ethic, but I do. My whole like I suppose it's my faith. I believe that like I'm blessed wherever I go. So I was fortunate. Like, I did well in IT. I got good jobs. I moved up the ladders. Yeah, but it was just I never put the effort in. I never put the work in. and I never had any sort of fulfillment. Never. I was never proud of what I did, so seeing this, and you get small things like this, and that phone call that led to something that was real was a really big, as you say, you feel like I'm moving the right way.
Yeah, I love these stories from people like yourself that, starting over always gets me a little a little bit pumped to start my own thing, I guess.
Yeah.
And another thing that I get pumped about is a new patron, by the way, Kevin McCallan. Big shout
Yeah.
out to him for coming on board this month, and a big shout out to my new patron, or my normal patrons, all my normal patrons, I should say. And especially my top two heroes, Steven Suhus and Sylvester Arneson and Andreas Wallman. Thank you. Just that was a side note, just to get it in the middle of the podcast there. By the way, people, if you do want to be a patron and support this podcast and the Garage Avenger YouTube channel, please head over to Patreon and become part of the GA Nation. I would love to have you aboard and appreciate your support. But rather than tell people about my Patreon, I want to get on with the rest of the podcast. Let's get into the rapid fire 5. You ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready. Bring it on.
All right, man. What's something people get wrong about you, Mark?
I think people see me and think that I'm not really an introvert, but I really am.
That's interesting. I see you fully as an introvert just by the way you talk. I think.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I would admit, like I play, in church, and I'll be in front of like big groups of people and stuff, and I think everybody automatically assumes like I'm this confident person and stuff. So, but I'm not.
Yeah, interesting. What's something you like doing that has nothing to do with making or woodworking?
Music and food. But then I suppose if you think about it, it's kind of you make music and you make food. So.
Yeah, you do, don't you?
Yeah.
You could say you like eating food.
Yeah,
that's something I definitely like doing.
Yeah, big time.
What project is completely priceless that you could never sell?
I don't really have things like that, but I have one thing that I really regret not having. And when I was a kid, like really, really, really young, like maybe 3, 4, I remember making, with the help of my granddad, a kitchen roll holder for my granny.
Okay.
And it was this ugly piece of wood with a dowel in the middle, like a big dowel. It must have been half a brush shaft or something.
Yeah.
And painted with white gloss paint. And she used that until she moved out of her house just before she died, to go into a home. And I really regret not having that, because that must have been used for 25 years. And it just goes to show you, like, you can learn so much about like the simplicity of things, the use of things, and just those memories that like she did use that. I really regret that it got bent somewhere along the way when the house was getting cleared out.
I mean, for me, just you saying that means like she used it because it meant something, not necessarily because it was functional or, was the best, thing to use, but just because it meant something. I think that means a lot more than anything else.
And it's the first thing I ever remember making, from start to finish as well. So
amazing. What does happiness look like?
Having enough and knowing what you're made to do, and then spending as much time doing that as you possibly can.
And who should be the next guest on this podcast?
I think I would like to hear Ethan Abrahamson from Building a Furniture Brand. I think he'd be good on this.
Oh,
lots to learn about him.
Yeah, I don't know him, so I'm gonna have to go check him out.
Yeah,
awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap this thing up?
Yes, I think one thing you're saying about people listening to it. This was me, and a lot of friends and family would say maybe, what about just doing that on the side, or do your main job for X amount of time and then doing this on the side. And something I always said was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go all in, because there can't be a plan B. You can't fall back on something that you need to work hard enough to make this work. Yeah. I think that's what I would like to do, that and go and do what you love.
Love it. All right, to wrap this up, ultimately it comes down to this. You are the expert on you, and they are not. I hope you've gotten something from this episode and grasped a little understanding from Mark's story that the context of any advice is important to do what's right for you. You need to listen to your gut and remember those voices you've heard in your head are often a lifetime of other people's opinions. If you got something from this show, I encourage you to give me some feedback. You can do so by sending me a DM to @GarageAvenger on Instagram. And also, if you thought this show was valuable for someone else, please share it with any friends or family who think it would be valuable. Thank you, Mark, for coming on the show. Just before we finish up too, Mark, where can people find you?
If you just Google Justin Wood NI, you should be able to find me, but all the social media is at Justin Wood NI. And listen, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure, a real honor to be on the show.
Oh, you're more than welcome, Mark. Thanks for sharing your story. I'm Justin White. Remember, ignite your creativity and go make your ideas reality. Until next time, keep pushing yourself, keep ballsing up things, keep learning, get inspired, and I'll catch you on the flip side. All right, man, we're out. That's it. It's done.